Right. Or has it, like you said, is it even to the point where is it actually not active at all, you know?
Right. I mean, we don't know. We only know what's been told to us.
Exactly. That's true.
And history would tell us a number of times when we're sold a narrative, it really wasn't the truth. And tens of years or hundreds of years or even 20 years or even 15 years down the road, whatever it is, the truth finally emerges of what really happened. And so again, my question, I'm coming from the perspective as my kids are seeing this and I'm seeing this take place. We're having conversations in our household about it. My kids and I are talking about it, and this is important information. This is historical events, and we have to ask questions and understand why this is happening. You know, and I think it breeds great discussions around the dinner table for our families. But then again, we have to be able to ask questions. We have to be able to wonder. We have to be able to question the motive. You know what I'm saying? And so I think they're great teaching moments. But again, my question still remains: what's the real story here? Why is this really happening? What's the real story? Not just the narrative that we're being told.
Right. So you think it's way more than the fact that Ukraine was once part of the USSR and things like that?
Well, historically speaking, I believe Ukraine was at one point in time bigger in its own country before Russia.
Right.
You can look in history books and find that there. You can find other stuff as well regarding these two countries. And it's just ironic that the same leaders today that are going at this, in the 1800s, there was a war going on, and the leaders were named the same, Vladimir, right, and Volodymyr. They're the same exact names going at it.
Right.
And so it's just interesting to me. But I don't know that we know all the truths. We know that the United States, and we know that NATO. We're talking to Ukraine, and they were an applicant to become a member of NATO. And if he became a member of NATO, then Russia couldn't invade, number one, because an attack on any NATO country is an attack on all of NATO under Article 5 of those accords. And so I think he had to move because he wants this back. Why go after Ukraine so hard, and why go after Ukraine with the threat of nuclear warfare? I mean, that's exactly what he did. I'm going after this, and if anybody comes after me, I'm going to push the button. So he not only went after it, but then he doubled down and said, "This is what I'm going to do if anybody steps in." And the world stood by and watched Russia run over Ukraine, and it's happening now. We don't know if and when they're going to take the capital. It looks possible. It's past the 72-hour mark that they were saying it was going to take 72 hours before they seize the capital. They haven't seized it yet, to my understanding, and so things are developing. But what's really happening and why? And is it because he didn't want to be part of the UN, or rather NATO? And then you have the other countries as well. I mean, who's next? Is he going to go after anybody else? So all these questions that I continue to have, and I continue to research and look up. And I would like to come back to this in a couple of weeks, a week or so, and see where it's at and do an update on it.
Yeah, I definitely want to make sure we come back to this, because right now, as we're seeing, about 200 refugees have fled. 200,000 refugees have fled Ukraine. Like you said, they claimed that they would have been taking the capital by 72 hours. As small as the military that Ukraine has, they have definitely been showing a lot of heroism there, and really a lot of power to hold these Russians back. I'm as far as the Putin activating the nuclear warheads and things like that, it's two things for me. One thing he said was that basically he's not liking the aggressive statements of NATO.
Right.
That's what he said. But I also think it's because of what we're saying. They still haven't taken the capital yet. And they're definitely surprised at how much fight that the Ukrainians have been putting up by themselves, because if I'm correct, there hasn't been any other troops sent in to help them.
No one stepped in, to my knowledge, either. The United States has sent I believe it's a total of 107,000 troops so far to Germany. And I know that NATO have rallied sent some troops to the eastern front of that area.
Right.
and believe it's just to protect against the or protect the actual NATO members.
Right. 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 Um, do you think that, and let's kind of speak on assumption just a little bit, right? Do you think that we could be setting up some type of pretext to kind of make sure that we start a move that way?
I think, speaking in that arena, it would be I think it would be unintelligent for us to assume that there isn't something in place right now, that our government and governments of the world are not working on something and are planning, strategizing. I mean, these are big moves. These are big countries. This is big power. It would be hard for me to believe that the world and the world leaders are not coming together and planning something already. So I do think the United States has something brewing. I do think that other countries are involved, because how could you sit by the entire time and watch this happen as other
Right.
powers or as the other rather leaders of the world are watching this? I know earlier today, and I haven't seen the update yet, but I know that that NATO was calling an emergency meeting, or UN, and they're having an emergency meeting to go over this whole thing. So they're having conversations. Something has to be done, because the reality is, if Russia can go into Ukraine, just take it so easily without anyone stepping in, the next question I have is Taiwan next? Is China going to go after Taiwan? Because this is looming as well. You see this stuff happening. They've been flying fighter planes into their airspace. Taiwan's been responding with their air force as well. So it's going back and forth, and so it's interesting to see this is happening. But if Russia can go in and take over Ukraine, then what's next? And be met with no real repercussions. I mean, I get the sanctions. I know they're meant to have long-term effects and cripple the economy, as President Biden said. Nonetheless, I just don't know that the countries and the world community can go along seeing this happen and actually physically doing nothing other than sanctioning them.
Right, because at this point, the sanctions aren't doing anything. The sanctions aren't enough to make Putin say, "Okay, we're done."